This is part 2 of the MORIKO top sew along from Notches Patterns, and there's a wealth of options with this pattern with at least 5 different top styles to choose from. Today we're going to sew along together and we're going to make the top with the crossover front and the crossover back detail. So let's get started with our sewing journey. Hi there, I'm Christine the Gemini Stitcher and welcome to my sewing space. I love doing these sew along, and this is the second part of the second garment in our capsule collection, which is the MORIKO top from Notches Patterns. As I've already said, there are an awful lot of options with this pattern, and I've decided that the sew along is going to be one of what I think will be the most difficult to get to fit, and it's the one that's got the crossover front and the crossover back detail on it. So let's go through the pattern pieces that we're going to need to make this top. I've chosen the short sleeve version with pattern piece E, so you need 2 sleeves, whether you do long sleeves or short sleeves, so you need 2 of pattern piece E. You're going to need 1 of pattern piece C, which is going to create the gathered front detail on our top. And then, this can be a little bit confusing. You're going to need 3 of pattern piece D, because you're going to use 2 of them for the back crossover and 1 of them with piece C for your front crossover. So I would cut 1 on the fold, so you get a mirror image of 2 of them for the back, and then get a single layer of fabric and cut an additional 1 with your fabric right side facing up, and then you've got your piece D for the front as well. In part 1, I went through in detail what you need to sew this pattern, so bob back there if you've not watched that one already. But we'll just do a quick recap of the equipment that we're going to need to make the MORIKO. You're going to need a jersey needle, and you're going to probably need some stretch fix. I will definitely be using stretch fix. I'm also going to be using my trusty spray starch. And the only other 2 things you will need is some matching thread and 1 centimetre wide clear elastic as well. So that's all you're going to need, and we're going to get a beautiful top at the end of it. So let's get sewing. So we're over at the ironing board, because the first thing we've got to do is press over these diagonal edges on pieces C and pieces D. And you're doing that to create a casing for your stretch clear elastic. Now it says to press it over by 1 centimetre. I personally would press it over a little bit more than that, because it's going to encase your clear elastic. So make sure I put a pin in one end, then grabbed my elastic, and I'm just going to check that it will actually, there we go, yeah, I'm happy with that. That's going to cover that elastic. So I know you can't see, but the elastic is encased in there, and it is literally just covering it slightly on the outside edge, and that's what you want. So don't measure 1 centimetre, use your elastic as your guide. Now I'm using a pressing cloth, or it's not a pressing cloth, it's what you use for heat transfer pressing. And you can get this on a roll from Amazon for about £8. And it really works well. So I'm just going to pin either end of the piece that I want and use that as the guide. If you want to put another pin in the middle, then feel free. I've also got my trusty stay press, but we'll see if I need it. I've got my iron on a medium heat because the fabric I'm using has got a little bit of poly in it, and we're just going to press that seam over. So there we go, that's our first seam all pressed over, and I'm happy not to use best press this time. If it was curling back and trying to go back on itself, then I would then spray some best press and repress it again just to keep it all in place, but it's working well with this fabric without it, so don't use it unless you have to. So that's piece C pressed. I just need to do the 3 piece Ds and then we can get the elastic sewn in. So that's all the pressing done for now. The next thing we need to do is grab our clear elastic, and we need to cut a piece the total length of the diagonal, or where it's going to go under that pressed edge, for each one. Now, the easiest way to do this is to measure your pattern piece along the edges, and that's the lengths that you need to cut. So I've cut 4 pieces of elastic, 2 for the front crossover and 2 for the back, and they're all 18 inches long. Now, a little cheeky tip to do before you sew your elastic in to make sure that it gives you a snug fit is to just give it a quick stretch, because when it's straight off the roll, it needs easing just a little bit. So do that. Nice bit of exercise for the chesticles. What do we think? So I'm just going to stretch each of my pieces of clear elastic out, and it releases that tension on it, so that when you sew it in, it's going to fit better. Now, the pattern instructions tell you not to put any tension on your elastic when you're sewing it. I would put a tiny bit, just pull it slightly to make sure it lines up, and then it's going to be taut. Otherwise, you can end up with gaping around the chest area. So let's go to the machine, get it threaded up with matching thread, and get these elastic channels all done. Now I've got my first piece on the sewing machine. I've got my stitch set to a zigzag stitch, and I've set the stitch width on mine to 5, which is its maximum, because you want it to encase that elastic. The elastic is inside the channel here, and it's caught under. I've put the needle down and the presser foot down. Now, you don't want to start right at the edge, because it can tug your fabric into the needle plate and guck it up, and we really don't want that. So start, I would say, a good centimetre in from the edge. Sew a few stitches, and then as you go, make sure you tug on that elastic and just keep it taut as you sew. So all the zigzagging has been done and the elastic is secured in place. Now my zigzagging isn't the best on this fabric. It was a nightmare, but I've pressed mine over to the inside and I'm thinking I'm going to, not have the zigzag stitching on show and have it pressed to the inside, and then I'm just going to, when I finish the garment, if it doesn't lie flat, I'll just do a few hand stitches every so often to hold it down, and I think it gives it a nicer, neater finish anyway. Now we need to look at putting the gathering stitches into piece C and laying it on top of piece D for the front and getting them sandwiched together. Now, I'm gonna do a little trick with Stretch Fix to keep the bottom hem all held together, because there's lots of layers when you come to hem this otherwise, because you've got two pieces crossing over each other. So you've got two pieces of fabric for the hem on the front and the back. So let's go to the cutting table and I'll explain what we're going to do. Okay, so at the cutting table, this piece on top here is piece C, and then underneath it we've got piece D, and that's how they're going to be. I've got the paper on still so that I know which is which. And basically at the bottom hem, piece C goes all the way over piece D. So you can imagine, particularly with this shifty fabric that I've got, when you try doing a hem and you've got a double layer of fabric, it's going to start shifting, and you've got the gathers in the side. So what I've decided to do is, on the bottom piece, piece D, on the front of that I'm going to put a piece of Stretch Fix across, and then I'm going to iron piece C to piece D to secure them together. So I'm going to put the gathering stitches into piece C first. So I've ironed the Stretch Fix onto the bottom, holding piece C and piece D together in the way that they will be when the garment's finished. So I've done my gathering stitches in a different colour so that I can see them, and I've got C on top of D. Now in the side of D you've got a notch at the top near the armhole, and that's where we want to match the top of C to. So we're just going to pin that in place. Now I'm folding my elastic over so you can't see the zigzag stitches. So you can see we've got all this loose fabric that needs gathering in. So we're going to gather using the gathering stitches that we've put in and make C fit to D, even out the gathers, and then we're going to tack those two together at that side, and then we're going to tack them together at the other side. So I've gathered the side with the gathers in and done it to match up to the notch. And then the other side, I'll show you on the inside, matches up to the notch on the other side, and that's been pinned. So we're going to sew these with a narrow seam allowance because this is going to be within our finished seam, and it's just to hold them together. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to replicate it with the back panels because we've got a cross back as well, but there's no gathers in that, so the back one will just be done like this one has been done. So we've got our fronts and back side seams all tacked together now, and I've got them stuck together at the bottom with the Stretch Fix, so they're not moving, they're both stuck together, making it a lot easier. The next thing we're going to do now is to sew our shoulder seams together. So let's go to the table and then you can see how we're going to do this section. So this is the back of our top, and we've tacked down this side and tacked down this side, and we've got our stretch fix at the bottom there, sandwiching those two pieces together so they don't slip around. Now at the sides, we've turned that over to the inside because that's how we want it to finish, with no zigzag stitching showing. So we're going to do the shoulder seams, but we're not going to fold them over just yet. We're going to sew them each to each other flat, and then we're going to fold them over afterwards. So we very nearly have a top. This is the arm side, or the armhole. The top of the shoulder is here. We've sewn our shoulder seams together, and before we sew the side seams, we're going to put our sleeves in. So find the centre of your sleeve Now I'm going to use clips for this bit because I'm going to sew it straight on the overlocker. If you're doing on your sewing machine, you need to start using your lightning bolt stitch now. The tacking stitches we did at the sides, we just did on a straight stitch. They're not permanent stitches. It doesn't matter if they get compromised and snap. But from now on, if you're on your sewing machine, you're using your lightning bolt stitch. And if you're on your overlocker, set it to a stretch stitch. If you're using your overlocker, I always recommend using clips, not pins. So clip or pin the middle of your sleeve to the shoulder, then attach the two end pieces, front and back, and then work the rest of it in. You are doing curves that go against each other, so take your time, line them up. Lots of pins or clips here, and you'll be amazed, it will work round that curve. And the same with the other side. And then we're going to do the same with the other sleeve. As I said, I'm overlocking them in place. If you're on your sewing machine, you need to use a lightning bolt stitch. We're getting there. We've sewn the sleeves in. And as I said, I've done mine on the overlocker. You can do it in a stretch lightning bolt or zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. This fabric doesn't fray. Jersey fabrics as a rule, but I like to finish my edges. So the only other thing I've done since I popped back on is I've overlocked the seams, edges, the hem edges on the sleeves, and you can't see it, but I've ironed some stretch fix already onto the edge of the sleeves hems, just because it's easier to do it while it's flat. So now we're going to join the front to the back, girls, and it'll start to look like a top. Nearly there. So let's bob over to the table and get this clip together. So we've got our front and backs right sides together, and we're going to pin together some key points. The first one is you've got your sleeve and then you've got your underarm seam, and we want to try and make those two seams match up when we've sewn it. So grab a pin and poke it through. Can you see the seam there? We want to poke the pin through so that it goes right through that centre seam. Then get your other half and do the same thing again. Find the seam near the edge, poke it through. Pull those two seams together and then pin your pin to secure it. Now, because I'm on an overlock, I'm going to have to be careful where that pin is on, so the rest of mine is being clipped. If you're on a sewing machine, you won't have a problem. So we're going to clip up to where we've pinned it. The next landmark that we need to try and line up is where the crossover meets the side bodice on the front and the back. So again, do the same thing. Get yourself a pin where the edge of one of them is on one side. Pin it through and line it up with the edge on the other side. I've got a bit of elastic there. Get rid of that while we're at it. So that should line that up, and then the bottom hem should line up as well. And because if I didn't have that stretch fix layer in between them, it would be a hot mess trying to get those clipped together without everything moving and not knowing whether I'd got everything lined up. But I'm happy with that. So that's our edge from under our sleeve all the way to the hem, all lined up. You can either do your lightning bolt stitch. I'm going to be clever and just sew this straight on my overlocker. And then I've got the other side to do the same way. Then we've just got the hems to do and a bit of hand stitching around the neck. So here's the top, nearly finished. This is the front, so we've got the ruching at this side. I've got my two pieces. I'm so glad I used that stretch fix now. It's keeping that bottom two layers together and more controllable. Overlock the sleeve edges and they've got stretch fix inside, so they just need pressing up and a lightning bolt stitch on the hem. I need to put some stretch fix on the inside of the bottom hem, and I want to overlock the bottom hem as well, just for neatness. The only other thing I've got to do is sort out where the zigzag stitches are that I don't want to see. So I will be pinning it down and so I will be clipping it down, and then on the inside, every so often, just a few little hand stitches. You don't have to stitch it all the way along, and I wouldn't advise it because it's a stretchy fabric. It wouldn't work. So just do about 4 or 5 stitches, then a couple of inches gap, then 4 or 5 stitches. Where the shoulders are, you can now fold that seam to the back, fold it over, and you can neatly hand stitch that at the shoulder seams as well. So I'll go and get this all finished off now, and then I will bob back for the big reveal. So it's all finished. What do we think? I've used quite a flimsy fabric, so we're getting a few drag lines on it that if it was a ponte or a French terry or even a cotton jersey, that wouldn't happen. But I'm okay with that. I love the ruching at the waist over the tummy area because it crosses over at the front, you've got a double layer of fabric there, which really helps. But I think if you made it in fabric that was too thick, that might be a bit restrictive. I feel like an old-fashioned panty girdle. But yeah, very summery. I'll show you the back, but I've not really straightened it out. I need help with that. That's the only downside with having that cross at the back. You need somebody to straighten it out for you. Maybe it'll be a bit easier once I've stitched that down. And I think what I might do at the back is hand stitch, and at the front actually, that might make it work better. Where it crosses over and I know where I want it, pin it and hand stitch it there, because that'll make it easy for getting on and off. So yeah, garment number 2 complete. I hope that I've helped you on your MORIKO journey, and that you think my hints and tips on how to deal with jersey fabrics when you're making this type of garment will be helpful. Don't forget, stretch fix, best press, and stretch your elastic out to give it some stretchability before you sew it in. And my personal preference is I'm going to fold over where the zigzag stitching is on this top, and I'm going to just do some careful hand stitches every so often on the front and the back, just to keep it in place. And it'll make it easier then when I'm taking it on and off, particularly at the back, because I've put that cross at the back as well. Let me know how you get on in the Facebook group. The link will be below. I haven't seen any pics of anybody's garments yet, and we're on garment 2. So how are you all doing? Are you following along with me, or are you just along for the ride to see what I do and have a nosy? Either way, that's absolutely fine. I hope I've given you some help and hints and tips and encouraged you to 1, give the MORIKO top and dress a try, and 2, dip your toe into jersey and knit fabrics. I will see you all next Saturday when we're going to be doing our hacks for the MORIKO. Now, there's that many options with this pattern that hacking really is very limited, but I've found a way to make the single shoulder crossbody top or dress for people who still want to wear a bra and don't want to flash it. So join me next week for my bra hack. Take care, love you loads, bye for now.